Good morning, Island Council members and members of the Central Committee, Rolando Wilson, Vito Charles, Saskia Matthew, Island Registrar, Ms. Akila Levinstone, members of the Executive Council, Commissioners Bruce Sagers and Commissioner Everton Heiliger, Island Secretary, civil servants, and to the general public, whether here today or viewing via live stream. Welcome to the Central Committee meeting of Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026. Before going into the agenda points, allow me to mention the absence of Island Governor Johnson Johnson and Island Council Member Julio Every, who are both absent with notice. The governor had another obligation, and he will join us later for the Island Council meeting. I would also like to apologize for the technical difficulties we had earlier, so we are now starting with a late start, but nevertheless, I would also like to wish all public servants a happy Public Servants Day. We appreciate all the hard work you do for Saba, and thank you for your service. Today we have 9 points on the agenda. Point 1 was the opening. Before going into point 2, which is the approval of the agenda, I would like to ask the council that we add an additional agenda point to today's meeting, and this is a study abroad support policy. It wasn't sent in time to be added during the presidium meeting, of course, where the agenda is set, but I believe with the importance of this policy, it gives enough weight to be added to today's agenda, so that it can take effect thereafter once approved. We received the policy along with the proposal to our emails a week ago. And also the Department Head of Community Development and Culture is also here today and prepared to give a presentation for both us and the public. So I now look to you all for approval for this to be added to the agenda. Okay, we have approval. Therefore, the agenda is now 10 points. So with your approval, I would also like to ask that we put the study abroad at point 8 and move the annual report 1 point down to point 9. Also, I look for you for approval for this. Okay, so we have the approval of the agenda. We then go on to the minutes for the Central Committee meeting, and there were no minutes. We go on now to agenda point 4, citizens' right to speak on agenda points. I was informed that no requests by inhabitants had been received. We can therefore move on to agenda point number 5. This is the oral question round concerning announced questions from Island Council incoming correspondence during the period of April 11th to May 15th of this year. This is in line with Article 18 of the Rules of Procedure of the Island Council meeting. The first point would be 5.1, and this is the Executive Council letter regarding proposal for 2026 budget amendment, Monuments Council and Monuments Fund. This was flagged by Councilmember Charles, so we would go on to Councilmember Charles that he can raise his questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Basically, the letter talks about the establishment of a Monuments Council and Monuments Fund. It requests some funding to implement it. And my question is, in this letter, the council is requesting funding for the Monuments Council. Can the Executive Council provide an update on the process of establishing the Monuments Council and indicate what steps remain before it becomes operational?
Thank you, Councilmember Charles. I now give the floor to Commissioner Heiliger.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say good morning to the Island Council members and those that are listening via live stream. In regards to the question on Monuments Council, which was posted by Councilmember Charles, the Executive Council will provide the Island Council with a separate, more detailed update on the monument system and heritage protection in Saba. In summary, the legal and administrative framework for the Monuments Council is now in place. The necessary island decisions have been adopted. The members of the Monuments Council have been appointed, and the Council has already provided advice on the proposed designation of the first 5 monuments on Saba. The main steps remaining are the approval of the proposed budget amendment, establishment of the local monuments fund, and completion of the first monument designation procedures and registrations. The Executive Council expects the first formal monument designations to take place in the near future. The Executive Council will continue to keep the Island Council informed on the implementation of the monument system through the annual reporting required under the Monuments Ordinance, Saba 2010.
Thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. Island Council Member Charles, do you have follow-up questions or remarks?
Thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. You mentioned the annual reporting requirement, and I'm just wondering, because you talk about 5 monuments, the Monuments Council members, so I'm just wondering when the first reporting period will begin so that we can also ensure that there's the annual reporting after that.
I expect it in the 4th quarter of this year.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes that point. The next one is letter from Top Tier Rentals, concerns regarding access to airport and harbor for car rental services. This was flagged by Councilmember Matthew. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you mentioned, a letter was received from Top Tier Car Rental regarding restrictions on car rental companies meeting customers at the airport and harbor. This is actually not the first time that I've heard concerns about this issue. And Madam Chair, through you, I would like to know, has the Executive Council responded to the letter? And if so, what is the policy reasoning behind these restrictions? And how does the Executive Council balance the interests of taxi operators, car rental businesses, and visitors to Saba? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthew. I now look to the Executive Council for a response, please. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair Lady, Island Council members, colleagues, those here in the Tribune and following on social media. First of all, I would like to wish the civil servants that make things work here on Saba a happy and pleasant Civil Service Day. I thank you for your contributions, and again, without your efforts, what we see and enjoy wouldn't be possible. With regards to the letter that was received from Top Tier Car Rental, I would have to verify if indeed a response has been already sent. That's something that we can check. Yeah, we can give an answer pretty soon, I would imagine. This policy dates back to a very dated transportation policy. And, it was done back during a time when there were limited taxi drivers. I believe there was maybe only one or two car rental companies. And it was done that there could be a balance created because, as you know, there's only limited flights that come in and sometimes limited tourists. So it was done more so to protect the interests of the taxi drivers at that point in time. Again, a very dated policy, one that dates back long before I was even commissioner. This is something that is being reviewed right now by the tourism department to see how this can be revised because, like you mentioned, this is not the first time that complaints has been received. So once the advice on how to move forward is ready, we can report that back to the council.
You have the floor, Island Council Member Matthew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the follow-up would be, since the policy is being reviewed and possibly updated, then I assume that maybe the letter wasn't answered as yet. But if it has been, then I would also like to know when we could expect response on when it was answered and how it was answered, actually. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any follow-up remarks, Commissioner?
Yeah, I do. The review would go beyond just, evaluating whether that's a policy that should continue or not. It's also looking at, for example, the size of the existing taxi fleet. Should rates be revised based on, the rise in fuel costs? So it's more of a broader review, but obviously it would include, whether or not the policy of having or not having the rental companies at the airport will be included.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Zegers. I then move on to the next point, which is letter from Mr. Otto DeVries, formal submission, documentary record template, the case for differentiated treatment of Saba within the BEST framework. This was also flagged by Councilmember Matthew. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that I think it's actually a positive thing then that residents actually taking the time to engage with the government and putting ideas forward. And citizen participation should be encouraged. However, since the letter was addressed to the Island Council, that the Island Council is not the body responsible for responding to or implementing such proposals. I'm not sure if the Executive Council received this letter, but I would like to ask the Executive Council to provide Mr. DeVries with a response regarding the substance of his submission. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthew. Does anyone from the Executive Council wish to give a remark, or can we go to the next agenda point? Commissioner Heiliger, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A response will be given to Mr. Otto DeVries in written. I hope it can be done in due time, as it has important value to the questions that he raised and also his concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. We can then go on to the next point, which is 5.2, Executive Council Decision List. And the first one is from April 14, 3.0.1, Building Permit Troy Hill Road, 24 to 26 to bottom. This was also flagged by Councilmember Matthew. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I was going through the decision list on April 14th, of April 14th, I noticed the building permit, and a question came to my mind. So it's not necessarily based on the submission of this permit in particular, but actually my question is, I know that building permit decisions are subject to objection and appeal procedures, and affected persons can challenge permit decisions. Now, I know we had several discussions about the mountain road and permits that were granted there. I'm not going to get into that. My question is, how is the public informed of approved permits and objection opportunities? How does a resident who disagrees with a permit know what steps to take and within what time frame? And how many residents realistically know this? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthew. I now go to Commissioner Zegers.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I believe it's fair to say that this is in an area that still needs improvements of how it's communicated to the public. I'd be the first one to say that, and that's something that needs more attention moving forward. Second to that, I think it's important to mention that the spatial development plan, I believe, addresses many of the concerns that you and many others may have about what's possible and where, because, discussions about a mountain road, for example, is one that comes up very often. And that's in the process. I believe an update is going to be sent to the Island Council as early as this week or next week. And then it goes to public consultation. So I agree with you that this is an area that needs more attention. We need to communicate more, give more information to the public, and that's something that we will have to work on moving forward.
Councilmember Matthew, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Zegers, for your response. Just a follow-up question. In the interim of the spatial development plan, can we actually make a decision how we're going to move forward with these things? Because I think it's kind of like the snake biting his own tail. Permits keep coming up, of course. People are building. We could see that all around the island. But I think it's necessary for people to also have the opportunity to, make objections if they have. So maybe we could put something in place in the interim. I mean, it's not something new. It's just something that we haven't really done to give residents the opportunity to voice their opinions on this matter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthew. Commissioner Zegers, do you have a response? Okay.
Yeah, we can discuss it with the team and see what's possible.
Okay. All right, thank you. We now move to the next point, which was flagged for April 14th, 3.0.3, visit to ministries in The Hague and attending the IPDC conference. This was actually flagged by me, and I just have 3 questions regarding this. And I would like to know if the trip already took place, and if yes, can the Executive Council provide an update on what outcomes or commitments resulted from these meetings? Also, can the Executive Council provide an update on the status of the climate adoption plan and indicate when the Island Council can expect to review or discuss this plan? And final, what specific funding opportunities are being pursued under NEP Phase 2, and what projects are Saba intending to submit for consideration? As in the Executive Council decision list, it did touch on that as well. And Commissioner Zegers, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Indeed, that visit did happen, and it happened with civil servants, policy workers attended the meetings. And during the visit to The Hague, Saba presented the first draft proposals for the NEPP Phase 2 funding, which were well received. Follow-up discussions on funding continuing and additional opportunities for collaboration, particularly in food security and wastewater management, were identified. At the IPDC conference, Saba presented its climate adaptation ambitions with a focus on food security and supply chain resilience. The conference also provided a valuable opportunity to exchange knowledge with other islands and Delta regions facing similar challenges. The draft climate adaptation plan was shared with the Island Council and other stakeholders in May for consultation. Following the consultation, the contents will then be finalized and prepared for publication. The public launch is currently planned for October during See and Learn. Although no comments were received from the Island Council during the consultation period, there is still an opportunity to provide input should the council wish to still do so. For the funding for the NEPP Phase 2, so far only the Ministry of LVVN has come forward with a contribution with funding. Saba has submitted proposals that build on Phase 1, focusing on invasive species control, ecosystem restoration, food security, waste management, and rainwater management. While funding for all proposed activities has not yet been secured, we believe it is important to present a comprehensive vision so that Saba is well positioned as additional funding opportunities may become available.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers, for the update. I don't have any follow-up questions concerning this at this time. Does anyone else have any follow-up questions? No? Okay, we can move on to the next point. The next point was from April 21st, and this one is regarding the provision, building, and road maintenance, and I also flagged this one. And the decision states that annual maintenance needs approximately 1.5 million for buildings and 3.3 million for roads. So I would like to know what assessment or study was used to determine these annual maintenance requirements, and can that information be shared with the Island Council? Which buildings and road projects have been identified?
So that Saba is well positioned as additional.
Sorry about that. Which buildings and road projects have been identified as the highest priorities for maintenance under this provision? The decision also notes that a structural funding gap will remain even after establishing this provision. So what is the Executive Council's long-term strategy for addressing that gap if additional funding from the national government does not materialize? And my final question regarding this point would be, what discussions have taken place with the national government regarding its responsibility for infrastructure maintenance, and what response has Saba received thus far? That concludes my questions on this point, and Commissioner Zegers, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Lady. The annual maintenance requirements are based on the AEF report, which is titled Klein Gebied Grote Opgave, commissioned by the Ministry of Bezaka, and it was published in March 2025. This is a public report. It's available on the Dutch website, and we can share the link with the Island Council if you already don't have that one. The maintenance provisions were only recently established. They are intended for the planned maintenance of existing buildings and roads, so not for new investments or new projects. The specific priorities will be determined as the multi-year maintenance plans and the ongoing road condition assessments are being finalized. The Executive Council continues to advocate for additional structural funding for infrastructure maintenance. This need has been confirmed by the AEF report, as well as the reports by the Council for the Environment and Infrastructure and the Council for Public Administration, all of which recommend a stronger role of the national government in financing long-term infrastructure. These discussions remain ongoing with the current cabinet. If additional structural funding is not secured, the public entity will unfortunately have to continue prioritizing the most urgent maintenance needs, rather than implementing a fully planned multi-year maintenance program. So again, being reactive rather than proactive when it concerns maintenance. But we are still very engaged with the ministries about funding to fill the gap. But Saba making this first step is already a sign of goodwill that we take this rather serious.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers, for your response and also clarification regarding this. I would also appreciate if you shared the report, because I personally had not seen it. And I have additional questions on road maintenance, but as for the annual report, so we'll get to that later. Does anyone else have any other follow-up questions regarding this? No? Okay.
I do have a question. I did have a question. I don't know if you asked it in regards to the year report, but my question is if there's a total amount in regards to the maintenance backlog. Does the report give any insight into what the total amount is?
The report does go in detail. It gives like a forecast over a sequence of years, how much is needed per island per year. Those numbers I don't know out of my head, but the report is rather detailed and gives quite a bit of insight into what's estimated to be needed to do the regular maintenance to roads, buildings, government properties. Yeah, no, the island secretary is saying it's like more than 30 million for the 3 islands.
And I would just like to say, because of, I guess, how comprehensive the document is, and also because it involves some of the issues that we deal with in terms of long-term funding and, you know, the multi-annual budget, I will also want to concur with my colleague and ask that it be shared with the Island Council so that we can take it in consideration for future discussions.
Thank you. We now move on to the next point, which was from April 28th, 3.1.0, and this one is regarding assistance, monitoring, and startup rainwater management, and this was flagged by Councilmember Charles. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that we have discussed in the past is rainwater management and rainwater monitoring, particularly, you know, periods of drought, excessive rainfall, and how to address that. And I see that in this particular decision, the Executive Council mentions a hydrologist, and the decision notes that a hydrologist with the setup of a rainwater management monitoring system. Can the Executive Council explain the purpose of this program, what the intended objectives of the monitoring system are, and how the information collected will be used to assist, will assist support, policy, and decision-making?
Thank you, Councilmember Charles. Commissioner Zegas, you now have the floor.
Okay, the purpose of this project is to better understand how rainwater moves across the island during heavy rainfall so that we can make more informed decisions about future investments in rainwater management. With support from a hydrologist from Lakes Waterstat, monitoring equipment has been installed to measure rainwater runoff, erosion, and the effectiveness of pilot measures. This information will help us evaluate the impact of the NEPP projects, improve future designs, and prioritize investments where they will have the greatest effect. An equally important objective is to build local capacity by training our staff to operate the equipment and continue the monitoring program independently.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And one of the questions we'd asked in the past, or I had asked in the past, is about monitoring periods of drought. And I was hoping that this rainwater management system was also going to be used to assist that in that regard. Because, here we are going into a couple of months of low rainfall. And in addition to that, we look at the news and we see that the El Nino that is projected for this year is going to be among the worst, which means a longer and more sustained drought, hopefully might be broken during the traditional rainy season, September to November. But nonetheless, we see increased attention for, or increased need for more water at homes from the reverse osmosis system. And one of the questions we'd asked, is there going to be a system to see what is the need, how much demand we get, and so on. So I'm a little taken aback that that's not part of this rainwater management system. I'm just wondering if the council plans to incorporate it at some point, or if there is going to be an opportunity for the council to address it.
Thank you, Councilmember Charles. Commissioner Zegas, you have the floor.
Yes, indeed, the scope of this project is very specific. It's more about erosion. It's about measuring the results of different initiatives that's being financed through the NEPP, and not necessarily through seeing what happens when we're in severe droughts, about the needs of water, about demand, about supply. It does have some monitoring about how to replenish like the water table. Also links to the reforestation project, how more water can be retained on the land rather than significant runoff when it rains. So the scope is more focused on that. We can see if it's possible to include something, if this person even has the expertise about that, but that's something that we would have to investigate to see if it's possible during the scope of this project, which is a very small project, not something that's long-term.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. Councilmember Charles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just wondering, I understand within the scope of this project, it might be limited, but outside the scope of the project, does the Executive Council see the need to establish such a monitoring system, given the reliance we have on reverse osmosis and water production? Particularly, we've seen increased population growth, higher demand for water. So I'm just wondering if the council sees the need for the establishment of such a system, whether or not the council will look into establishing that, and whether there is a commitment to do that in the future.
Commissioner Zegers.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Just to clarify, there is a commitment by the Executive Council to establish a rainwater monitoring system for periods of drought.
Yes, we will work on it, Councilman Charles.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move on to, there were no flag questions in 5.3, which is written questions to the Executive Council in line with Article 35, and also in line with Article 35, answers to written questions to the Executive Council. So we then move on to Agenda Point 6, which is Island Ordinance Audit Chamber, Saba. I now give the floor to Island Council Member Charles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the establishment of an audit chamber has been something that is it's been a discussion point for some time. The importance of audit chamber is important for especially the Island Council, because it can assist us with some of the information needs that we have. So it's good to see that there is a draft ordinance ready. And of course, a draft ordinance means that there's a financial commitment, because you have to have members for this audit chamber, and they also need to be paid, and their work, the most important work, the research, requires funding. I think earlier we realized that there was not sufficient funding to carry out research. When in discussions with, for instance, Stacia and Bonaire, they talk about $30,000, $40,000 for one bit of research. If you talk about a comprehensive document, and for smaller researchers, you're talking about $10,000 to $12,000. So you can see that getting and gathering information and providing reliable information is expensive. And so, but I think it's something that's important, and a commitment that we have to make if we want to improve the position of the Island Council. So in relation to that, I'd like to ask, the establishment of a local audit chamber has been a long-standing objective of both the local and national governments. Given this, is the Executive Council making provisions to include the establishment and operation of an audit chamber in the 2027 budget? And because not only the establishment is important, but the preparatory work to establish one. In addition, recognizing that the establishment of an audit chamber may require preparatory work before 2027, has the Executive Council considered whether a budget amendment in 2026 may be necessary to facilitate a smooth implementation process.
Thank you, Councilmember Charles. Commissioner Zegas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. This is not just a priority for the local government and national government, it's also a legal obligation. And one that has received attention now for quite some time about the progress that Saba is being made to establish such an audit chamber. Through the registrar, a request has been received for funding for 2027, and as such, this will be taken into the budget as that process is started. With regards to what might or might not be needed for 2026, I believe information will be required as to exactly how much is needed. And then once this information is received, it can then be taken into consideration when budget amendments are being prepared during the course of 2026.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegas. Do you have any follow-up questions, Councilmember Charles?
I don't have any follow-up questions. I just want to say that I think it's important, so I do believe we have to work on providing the information so that when the time comes, once the ordinance has been passed, that we can, hit the ground running, so to speak.
Thank you, Councilmember Charles. Does any of the other council member have any questions or remarks regarding this? No. Sorry. We then move on to agenda point 7, which is the Island Council Proposal 2026.1, Stable Language Policy 2026 to 2030. I now give the floor to Commissioner Heiliger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would like to motivate the reason for the Island Council to formally approve and adopt this policy. When we think about language, most of us think about words, but language is much more than that. Language is our history, it is our culture, it is how we tell our stories, express our feelings, and connect with one another. Here in Saba, we are blessed with a rich linguistic heritage. Saban English has been spoken on this island for generations. It is heard in our homes, in our stories, in our poetry, and in the way we express our identity as Sabans. At the same time, Saba has become a diverse and vibrant community. We welcome people from many different countries and cultures who bring with them languages such as Spanish, Dutch, Haitian Creole, and Tagalog, and many others. This diversity is one of our greatest strengths. The language policy for Saba is about recognizing that strength. It is about preserving what makes us uniquely Saban while ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to thrive. It is about supporting our children as they learn English and Dutch, helping newcomers integrate into our community, encouraging lifelong learning, and promoting a culture of reading and literacy. Most importantly, it is about creating opportunities. A child who develops strong language skills gains confidence. A student gains access to education. An adult gains access to employment and community life. A community gains understanding and connection. This policy does not ask us to choose between languages. Instead, it encourages us to embrace multilingualism while valuing the language that has shaped our identity for centuries. As we move forward together, let us celebrate Saban English, strengthen literacy, support language learning, and ensure that every resident feels included, respected, and heard. Before I conclude, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to the Department of Community Development and Culture for the hard work, research, stakeholder engagement, and dedication that went into developing this language policy. This document represents many months of consultation, collaboration, and careful consideration of Saba's unique linguistic and cultural landscape. I would also like to thank the members of the Island Council for their support and formally adopting, when the time comes, this policy. Your commitment demonstrates a shared belief in the importance of preserving our cultural heritage, promoting inclusion, and creating opportunities for all residents of Saba. This policy belongs to the entire community, and its success will depend on all of us working together to bring its vision to life. And with that, Madam Chair, I motivate the reason for the Island Council adopting this policy.
Thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. I now turn over the floor to Island Councilman Wilson, who has some questions regarding the policy. You now have the floor.
Good morning to my colleagues of the Island Council. Good morning to Commissioners Halliger and Sagers, Island Secretary, and standard guests in the Tribune and those radio listeners listening. First of all, Madam Chair Lady, through you, I would like to wish our dedicated, hard-working, loyalty civil servants a happy Civil Servants Day. Because of their work, hard work, many things wouldn't get done here around government building. Congratulations to all. And I do hope that government have given them a day off, a half day off. Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair Lady, I wrote in some questions. I got some answers going through my laptop last night now. Some answers bring more questions. And I just want to go along and go through them with the language policy 2026-2030. Point 1, is the book starter working? Is the book starter working? How is it being checked? Who supervises it? The answer, this is often by the library. This is offered by the library. They keep track on how many are distributed and encourage parents to visit the library with their children. Okay. But my question was, how are they keeping track? How are they keeping track? Is this being documented? This information is important so that we can plan better for the future. I can also give them to you. You can always answer me back. Point 2. As for promoting the Saba Creole language, it is a good step for all to be made aware of it. Who will be creating this booklet for the students? Answer. The answer was a public anti-Saba culture team in collaboration with the library. Will they make use of some of the local writers? That one. And point 3, Madam Chair Lady, it speaks, how will the reading culture be promoted to the public? You got an answer there. A suggestion being made as to what the library can do, or are they already busy with them? How many activities has already been organized for the last 6 months by the library pertaining to this? Point 4, are the schools still working according to an exam curriculum, right? To be answered by the Sacred Heart School and the Saba Comprehensive School. Madam Chair Lady, through you, why this question didn't be asked to the Sacred Heart School? We had almost 3 months here, April, May, June, you know? And I feel, you know, I mean, I'm gonna vote for it. I'm gonna vote for it. But I feel these questions should have been answered in the correct way and ask the school for information. Come, we live in a small square mile, 5 island, pick up the phone and call and ask, or visit the school and get the information. Point 5, is there a curriculum for the Dutch language to be answered by the Sacred Heart School and Saba Comprehensive School? It seemed also to Madam Chair Lady that these questions were also not asked. So you see, I does my homework. Point 10, the defamation approach sounds like a great idea, but does the school have sufficient qualified educators to do this? Is there enough time for this? on the school schedule. Okay, both schools are already applying this manual by providing different levels of languages to the class, the native language speaking. But was this mentioned in the inspections report? And when we go to point 11, recommendations that are started in this language policy, will these be implemented in the curriculum? The answer from government was they are recommended in the development and consultation with the Sacred Heart School and the Saba Conference School. Wherever these are implemented, it is decision by the school. Will the Department of Education keep track on this, Commissioner? I don't want to come back here next year again with the same questions. Because after we approve this, this is going to in effect, and we're going to monitor it. So, Mr. Commissioner, you got to put your team to work. Point 12, is there a curriculum in the Sacred Heart School for the new Dutch language? Why is this then that why is this then that every new Dutch teacher, there is another plan of action to be answered by the Sacred Heart School? Again, check these things out. Good. Have your people working on them. And why wasn't it asked? You know, and it goes on and on and on. Like I said, the more questions you ask, the answers you give me, and the answers you give me bring more questions. I'm going to give you this document, Commissioner, so that you and your people can go through it. You know, we have to be, like I said, we have 3 months. Each time it was postponed, and I have submitted the questions. Each time I give them, the questions. And when it comes to this, Mr. Chair, lady, Madam Chair, I will vote for it, but you have to be prepared. Your people have to prepare you better. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. I now give the floor to Commissioner Heiliger for his response regarding this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to Island Council Member Wilson, his remarks has been noted, and it will be discussed with the relevant department. As he has, most questions were answered, and yes, there were some answers that were still being needed. I will try to gather all of the answers to the remaining questions and put it back into a well-documented document for him and sent back to him.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Most welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. Do you have any follow-up remarks, Island Council Member Wilson?
No, but like I said, myself, but like I said, based on the answer that was given to me, to my questions, I'm very disappointed because they had ample time enough to look into these different things and things. You know what I mean? You get away this time, Commissioner, like I said, but after July, after the vacation, the holidays vacation, you know what I mean? The executive council members got to be on the P's and Q's because you're going to have more meetings like this. You have the budget coming up where a lot of questions will be asked and different things. And I keep telling you all, remember, it's an election year next year. You don't know who running with who. You know, and people are looking to, they want answers. The community need answers on a lot of things. They're afraid to ask. They're coming to each one of us in our different ways, and we're bringing them over to you all. Sometimes we send in the questions. Sometimes we don't get no answers. But things are moving and happening, you know, so be on the way. And again, and I'm going to say it again this afternoon too, we have in my 8 years and 9 years that I was commissioner, if I had the executive assistants and the policy workers that we have now, well, my God, I would be still in office, I think. But they're working, no, seriously. Put them to work, they're all, I don't envy nobody with the qualifications, but they're all qualified people, and they're getting good pay. Good pay. When you go through the budget and thing, they're getting good pay. You know, so make them walk. Don't be afraid. You are the boss. You're in charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. I now look to the rest of the council to see if further deliberation is needed on this point. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a remark on the Saba language policy. Yeah, this has been on our agenda for a few times now, and finally we should be passing it today. I am pretty sure that it's just going to be a hammerstuck, but I just want to thank the Community Development and Culture Department for taking the Island Council along with this decision. Initially, when I read the initial report, I thought maybe it was kind of just checking boxes because it's something that the Ministry of Education wanted all islands to have. But I'm happy that they took our advice into consideration and they have like the monitoring mechanisms so that we can see that, you know, when it's implemented, it actually works or it doesn't, and we could always sit back down on the drawing board and, you know, revise and keep going. So I'm happy to see this, and yeah, I think, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthew. Does anyone else have any remarks regarding this?
True, Madam Chair Lady. I too would like to thank the Department of Education for putting it together. And I'd like to be fair, but I'm still saying that more efforts could have been done. The answers and all of that and thing. You know, we didn't have to wait to go to 3 meetings to get this thing done.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. So I would also like to now ask the council, could this be considered a hammer piece for the Island Council meeting? Okay, so we conclude that this will be a hammer piece for this afternoon's meeting. So we now conclude with the agenda point 7 of the Saba Language Policy 2026 to 2030. We now move on to agenda point 8, which is the Study Abroad Support Policy. So how this will go is first we will have Commissioner Heiliger give opening remarks, then we will go over to the head of the Department of Community Development and Culture, who will give a presentation on this policy. Before continuing, I would just like to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes, and then we'll continue. Welcome back, everyone. So we stopped on the agenda point of the study abroad support policy. So I first give over the floor to Commissioner Heiliger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would like to also motivate the reason for the Island Council to adopt this policy. Madam Chair, it's a milestone for Saba's future, study abroad support policy. Education has always been one of the most powerful investments we can make in our people. For many years, the public entity Saba has provided various forms of assistance to students pursuing their studies abroad. However, these support measures existed in different forms and were not always brought together under one clear framework. Today, you will also have a presentation that will be given by the Department Head of Community Development and Culture. Today, an important, proud step forward with the adoption of the Study Abroad Support Policy 2026 is presented. This came out of a motion passed by you, Madam Chair, in September 2023 and was unanimously voted upon by the Council. There were some hiccups from study financing and DUR, but here we are today with the policy. This policy brings together housing assistance, tuition support, laptop grants, and additional support for professional studies into one comprehensive framework. More importantly, it sends a clear message to our students and families. Saba believes in you, and we are committed to helping you pursue your educational dreams regardless of financial circumstances. Special thanks are extended to the staff of the Community Development and Culture Department, our educational partners, parents, students, and all those who contributed their knowledge, feedback, and expertise throughout the development of this policy. I would also like to sincerely thank the members of the Island Council for their support, confidence, and commitment to the future of Saba by approving and adopting this policy when the time comes. Your decision represents an investment not only in education, but also in future workforce, leadership, and development of our island. And with that, Madam Chair, I motivate the reason for the Island Council to adopt this policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Heiliger. I would now like to welcome to the podium the Department Head of Community Development and Culture, Mrs. Rosa Johnson, and she will now give a presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me the space to present today the Study Abroad Support Policy on behalf of my colleagues at the Department of Community Development and Culture. Is on the screen?
Yes, no, it is. It's on the screen now.
So today I'm going to walk you through the policy. It's really for the public and for students and parents listening, or after, if you have questions, please feel free to stop by the Department of Community Development and Culture. We're here to assist and provide additional information if needed. And I hope that if after the policy is approved today officially, we will also post it online for everyone to have a copy of it. So today, the introduction, the current situation, objectives and goals of the policy, the eligibility criteria, the new grant amounts, the application process, support and guidance, and the conclusion. The Community Development and Culture Department has developed this study abroad support policy. It says 2026, but really it's been in development for the past 3 years, since 2023, as the Commissioner recently stated. Is to formalize the financial support available to Saban students who want to pursue their education abroad. The policy provides a clear framework for housing assistance, tuition support, laptop grants, and additional support for professional studies. It also outlines eligibility criteria, the application process, and additional guidance available to students before and during their studies. The policy aims to ensure that financial barriers do not prevent Saban students from pursuing higher education and investing in their future. The current situation of the policy, also as the Commissioner just announced, that we had some challenges with Duo providing study financing for Saban students. The criteria that is currently there left some students with limited options on pursuing their education further and not always meeting these requirements. The solution for this was that the public entity Saba would implement a granting of housing and tuition allowances to ensure that Saban students, regardless of their study choice, was able to have financial eligibility so that they could pursue their higher education abroad. The main objectives and goals of this policy was to expand access to higher education, to ensure that all students, all Saban students would have the opportunity to pursue higher education, regardless of their eligibility for Dutch study financing or the traditional academic pathways. Provide equitable financial support, offer fair and accessible financial assistance for tuition, housing, and educational technology, to reduce financial barriers and support student success abroad. It bridges gaps in existing funding programs. We address limitations in current study financing requirements by supporting students who have been accepted into recognized educational institutions but do not meet the standard funding criteria. This is really applicable for vocational students, especially those studying in the region, going to, for example, NEPA or Barbados. Invest in Saba's future development, empower Saban students to achieve their educational goals, develop valuable skills and qualifications, as well as contribute to the social and economic development of the Saban community upon completion of their studies. Those who are eligible for this policy is that they must have a residency, so the applicant must be a resident of the island of Saba. Nationality, the applicant must hold Dutch nationality or have a valid residence permit. School acceptance is also required. The applicant must have an acceptance, been accepted into a recognized educational institution. The age range for this policy is for students between the ages of 16 and 30 years of age at the time of application. It's also in line with the dual study financing. A 5-year island residency the applicant must have resided on Saba for at least 5 consecutive years prior to the application. This is also in line with the ESSEDWay policies for receiving social services. The education criteria is that a certification or diploma from our local high school, and a diploma with 3 or more CXC generals, grades 1 through 3, that is equivalent to a pass, or a CVQ vocational education diploma of a level 2, or as well a pro diploma can also qualify if they want to further their education. Exceptions may be considered by the Executive Council if the intended studies are deemed beneficial to the Saban community. I think an exception is usually like the aviation studies. So now, with this policy, we have adjusted the amounts. As we all know, cost of living has increased, not only on our island, but globally. Now, the new amounts in the policy is $500 per month for students studying outside of Saba for housing allowance. Tuition allowance is up to $300 per month. And a supplemental professional course tuition, you can apply for this and get an additional $200 per month for professional programs such as pilot training. Regional study tuition allowance is up to $400 a month for studies within the Caribbean region, with the option of a one-time direct payment to the institution. So for an example of this is students going to NEPA. We can either do a monthly payment for tuition or one lump sum directly to the institution, and this has been done already a few times. Also, students are can apply for the laptop grant. It's a one-time grant of $1,000 for the purchase of a personal laptop or iPad device. This can be done one time for your bachelor's, and it can also be done for your master's program, because after time technology changes. Grant for professional studies. This is a one-time grant of $5,000 to cover initial startup costs. In the policy, we have stated there's 2 applications available per year. Again, this is something that is specific, really, that we've used in the past for aviation studies because they don't qualify for dual. It's good to note that recipients of the $5,000 professional course startup are not eligible for the tuition allowance, but may still qualify for housing tuition because the $5,000 would be seen as a tuition allowance. The application process, as stated in the policy, is that communication first for the policy. An announcement that the application process is open will be made in Q2 for students and parents to be aware of the new application cycle. They can apply online. We will create an online form, or they can also come by the office and apply in person. Documents that they should bring are proof of residency, so an ID card or a census registration, a copy of their passport, a copy of their high school diploma or CVQ certificate or pro diploma, acceptance letter into the higher educational institution that they will be attending, and if for the laptop, they also have to show either a proof of invoice that they purchased a laptop, or we can also purchase it for them via the ICT department. And for those that were trying to get dual, they can also show proof that they were denied by dual for study financing. For continued support through the studies, proof of enrollment from the educational institutions each school year is also necessary for us. This way we can also keep a database and record of the students that we're supporting, but also what schools they're attending and whether they complete or finish their studies or not. The public entity Saba is committed to providing comprehensive support and guidance to students throughout their educational journey. The public entity Saba has established memorandums of understanding with several institutions in the United States and the Caribbean. The ones in the Caribbean are still pending due to, what's the word? I forgot the word. Accreditation from the Institute of Norfolk, and that is the institution in Barbados, the Samuel Jackman Prescott School. We do have already some memorandums of understanding with the United States. Lipscomb University has been a favorite for those wanting to go to the US to school. And we also have a school in Fort Lauderdale, Nova Southeastern University. I do believe there's one student already has been there too. We also have an Off the Rock study preparedness program. We started it last year for students that would be going abroad to school. So this is part of our support and guidance program, and we do this in collaboration with Turangulu as well in the Netherlands, but also with the SPOT and the education team at the Community Development and Culture Department. The Study Abroad Support Policy 2026 will become the official framework for the administration of educational support provided by the public entity Saba once it's officially approved. The Department of Community Development and Culture will monitor the implementation of this policy and provide updates biannually. The policy may be evaluated periodically to ensure it continues to meet the educational needs of Saban students. That's why there's not an end date of the policy, it just states 2026, because we do believe revision will be needed on an annual basis due to changes of preferences of where students want to study, or the amounts may have to be adjusted if cost of living continues or other global issues. So this one is already a milestone for us, and we feel that this is a good step forward in the direction of supporting students who want a higher education or an experience abroad to study. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Now I would just allow for any remarks or questions or anything. Unfortunately, because it wasn't added on the agenda, council members would not have sent questions in advance, but of course, you'll be able to answer, and for any political questions, of course, it would go over to the Executive Council. I just have 2 remarks to make and a question. One is concerning the retroactive payments. I know we had this discussion prior that since, of course, the motion was passed a few years back, and since then, many things have happened. Some students may have even completed some studies and so forth. So I would like to know what's the status of the retroactive payments. And the additional one was just a confirmation for the 5,000 startup allowance. I just want to clarify that this would also apply to students that were granted study financing to go to the US or the Caribbean region, but they don't get a startup allowance, of course, only those going to the Netherlands. So I just want to confirm that they can also qualify then for this 5K that, of course, could cover their startup cost.
The 5K, I cannot confirm about the region at this moment, but definitely for the students wanting to go for the aviation studies, the 5K would be granted to them. I will come back to you with that response. But for your first question about the retroactive payments, that indeed is part of this policy. It was part of the base aid proposal, which has already been approved by the Executive Council. And I didn't explain it in the presentation because it's more specific information for students that have already been through the system, and they will be reached out privately by the department and the finance department to make arrangements for the retroactive payment.
Okay, and just one follow-up, maybe not for you, but maybe for the Executive Council then. When can this payment be expected to be made? To the students, of course.
I think relatively soon. As I said, the base aid proposal was approved. Budget has been allocated. Also, we are asking for additional funding as well for this year because the policy will cost us now a bit more. So all of that was approved in the base aid. So it's a matter of following up with the students and making the transaction.
Okay, thank you. That concludes for me. Does anyone else have any remarks, questions, anything? Mr. Charles?
No, I just wanted to say that it's good to see that this is finally being done. I know it's one of the first motions brought forward by the chair lady, and she's been very much following up on it to ensure that it did come to fruition, and it's good to see that it's being done, there's money being made available, and that it's going to happen in a relatively short time frame. So, or the payments will begin in a relatively short time frame. So I just want to say thank you for everybody that worked hard on this to ensure that it became possible. And congratulations to the chair lady for making sure that it got done.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. And now go on to Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 clarifying questions, actually. So the $5,000 startup allowance, you mentioned the aviation studies, but what would be something else that would qualify under the startup allowance?
Very good question. At this moment, I don't have a second example, but I can get back to you with what would be another study that would not qualify. Trying to think, but I can't think of one.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Yeah, I could imagine some people might feel that maybe it's more specific to the aviation study, but it's good to know that there's other options. And you mentioned about communication to the public. Of course, right now you're communicating to the public, but I think the presentation said Q2 of this year. Did communication already start? Because I know things already happening. We didn't really approve it yet, but and the school year is almost finished and nearly ready to start again. So did communication already start? And if not, then what are the plans to start?
Communication has already started, but not like publicly on social media, but really for the target group. So students at the Saba Comprehensive School are aware of this policy and how to reach us, and the guidance counselors at the school would have also shared this information with the students. So they're very well aware of it. It's more about the adjusted amounts, and also for the ones that are already receiving it, we've already started to notify them of the changes, which are positive changes for them.
Thanks again. Just one more question on the 5,000 startup. You mentioned 2 applications per year, and yeah, I think that's quite understandable. But how do we justify which 2 applications would be, that we would choose, for example? Like, what are the criterias, or are there criterias?
Well, actually, we came up with 2 because we kind of did like a little inventory forecasting with the students at the Saba Comprehensive School. And again, it was mainly focused on the aviation part because they have the most challenges as well as the higher costs to go abroad. And we kind of checked like how many of them were interested in pursuing aviation, and it came up to maybe about 2. So that's why we came up with 2.
Councilmember Matthew, does that conclude your? Councilmember Charles, you can ask your follow-up.
Just for say clarification as well, would it be possible that there are exceptional exemptions made for persons if there is a need for maybe a third or maybe not a fourth, but maybe a third or fourth application?
I mean, as we stated, exceptions can always be made, but it's really then based on finances and what is available. But also, we have to also look at the job market, and I think there's many factors that would need to be weighed before we make a final decision.
And of course, this is more directed towards the executive because, once someone receives payment, there's this belief that somehow others have gotten it, so I should get it if I'm entitled to it. So I just want to ensure that we weigh we balance everybody's considerations so that everybody feels that they get the necessary assistance.
Thank you. And I would just like to give some closing remarks on this point. Of course, Rosa, thank you so much for giving the presentation. Also, I would like to sincerely thank your entire department and everybody who has worked tirelessly on it. I know since 2023, when this council, of course, passed the motion I did present, we've had multiple meetings with your department, also with the legal department, and so forth, and we really appreciate all of the work that you put into it. And I think now we have more of a realistic policy that more students can benefit from. Of course, I also like that everything is now included into one policy, which would include, of course, the agreements by different universities, also the laptop policy and so forth. So it's really all in one spot where everybody can go to and find it. I think many students will benefit from this. I also know there will be questions likely from students who do qualify for study financing to see how they could get more support, because we know studying abroad is very expensive. And I really hope in both councils, of course, we can continue to lobby with dual and study financing to also ensure that those costs could be reevaluated for students who do qualify, and to ensure that they could also, of course, live better and be able to pay their study bills. So I would like to sincerely thank you all. And yeah, I'm happy that after, of course, this will be passed, that students will be able to benefit more from it. So thank you. We now move on to, before moving on, of course, I need to ask the council, will this also be a hammer piece or is more deliberation required for the Island Council meeting? Okay, so we conclude also that the study abroad support policy will be a hammer piece for the Island Council meeting. We now move on to agenda point 9, which is the Island Council Proposal 2026.3 Annual Report 2025. I now move on to Commissioner Zegers, who will present the report. Commissioner Zegers, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Lady. It is my pleasure this morning to present to you the annual report and financial statements of the public entity for the year 2025. Each year, this meeting marks one of the most important moments in our financial governance. It is the moment when the Executive Council gives an account to the Island Council and ultimately to the people of Saba for how public funds have been managed over the year. Before turning to the financial results themselves, I think it's important to recognize that this annual report is not a document that suddenly appears at the end of the year. It is the culmination of the financial reporting cycle that this Island Council has been actively involved in throughout 2025. During the year, the Executive Council presented the quarterly implementation reports and budget amendments to the Council, providing updates on the execution of the budget, financial developments, and policy implementation. Today's annual report brings all of those quarterly reports together into one complete and audited overview of the financial year. I also wish to thank the Island Council for the constructive engagement throughout this process. Last week, Council members participated in a technical presentation on the annual report and financial statements, along with detailed questions and discussions ahead of today's public meeting. I believe that process contributes to better informed decision making, and ultimately strengthens our financial governance. This responsibility goes beyond presenting figures. It is about demonstrating that public resources have been managed responsibly, transparently, and in accordance with the law. I am pleased to report that 2025 was once again a financially sound year for the public entity of Saba. The total income for 2025 amounted to approximately $47.9 million, while total expenditures amounted to approximately $46.8 million, resulting in a positive year-end result of almost $1.2 million. This compares with a surplus of around $1.14 million in 2024. We therefore continue the trend of positive financial results that Saba has achieved in recent years. The surplus recorded in 2025 was primarily the result of unanticipated interest income that was not known when the original budget was prepared, combined with ongoing internal and external capacity constraints that delayed the execution of certain projects. These additional resources remained largely unspent during the financial year and contributed to the year-end result. The Executive Council proposes that the surplus be appropriated as follows: a contribution towards the renovation of the Satel building for the amount of $200,000. The Satel building will eventually be used for the expanded Island Council. A contribution towards a reserve to assist with the Harbour developments that were either not part of the scope or were removed from the project because of the shortage of budget at the time for $830,000. This will add to the $1.5 million that's already reserved for the building of the most essential facilities once the Harbour is completed, or the marine works of the Harbour then. To add $100,000 to the resilience reserve and the remaining $66,627 to the general reserve. The proposed allocation reflects our continued philosophy of responsible financial management. It balances today's financial result with tomorrow's obligations, while strengthening our financial resilience and ensuring resources remain available for future priorities. In general, when people hear the words annual report, they often think of numbers, accounting, spreadsheets, and budgets. But financial management is about much more than numbers. Good financial management creates opportunities, it creates confidence and credibility. And over the past 15 years since the transition, that credibility has become one of Saba's greatest strengths. Today, when we sit around the table with ministries and politicians in The Hague, we are heard. When we advocate for the issues that continue to adversely impact our island and people, we do so from a position of credibility. The result sometimes doesn't come as fast as we may want it to, but we are afforded a seat at the table, and we speak on a foundation of trust that is greatly linked to strong financial management. The credibility that has been built has helped make possible investments in building a new harbour, improvements to school facilities, a new gym, the planned enrichment centre, renewable energy projects, and so many other initiatives and investments that will benefit our community. These opportunities were not handed to us, they were earned. And they were earned because Saba has demonstrated year after year that public funds entrusted to us are managed in a responsible way. So while some may try to downplay or undervalue the importance of financial management, it has created significant momentum and opportunity. Perhaps the strongest evidence of that reputation is our audit history. This year, Ernst & Young has once again issued an unqualified audit opinion on our financial statements, as well as an unqualified audit opinion on compliance with the applicable laws and regulations. These achievements deserve to be placed into perspective. Since 2011, Saba has received an unqualified audit opinion on its financial statements. And since 2013, Saba has consistently received an unqualified audit opinion on compliance with the relevant laws and regulations. That represents more than a decade of consistently demonstrating sound financial governance, and until recently, being the only special municipality to earn such recognition. It is an achievement that every public servant, every department, every executive council member, and every island council member who has supported and contributed over those years can be proud of. The draft annual report and the audit opinion do not mean that there is no improvements left to make. In fact, one of the strengths of the relationship with both Ernst & Young and the CFT is that they continue challenging us to make further improvements. The CFT advised us to continue strengthening our liquidity position and resilience, to improve the monitoring and execution of investments, to further increase transparency in financial reporting, and to further develop the reporting of financial obligations. This annual report demonstrates that these recommendations have not remained on paper. During 2025, we further strengthened project monitoring, introduced more detailed reporting on special purpose grants, continued investing into digitalization of our financial systems, and began preparations to include financial obligations more comprehensively in future implementation reports. Likewise, the Ernst & Young audit shows encouraging progress. The auditors note that no new significant findings emerged during the 2025 audit. Previous reconciliation issues have been resolved, and improvements continue to be made in the quality of our financial administration. At the same time, they also maintain that financial management is a continuous process. Further work remains on strengthening internal controls over certain local levies, continuing improvements in debt collection, further enhancing cybersecurity and IT controls, and continuing to build organizational capacity. These are observations that we fully recognize, and many of these improvements are already underway. While several of these observations or risk areas have been reported on for several years already, it remains true that some of these matters are more complex than others and will take time. However, the important point is that every recommendation is taken seriously and translated into concrete improvements, which has been demonstrated over the years. That is a culture that we have built within our organization. Another important topic is our financial resilience. The annual report and the auditors both pay considerable attention to the reserves, the buffer capital, and the liquidity position. The liquidity figure reported in the financial statements does not represent money that can simply be spent freely. Unfortunately, that is simply not the case. A substantial portion of those funds represent special purpose grants that have already been committed to projects and future obligations. Good financial management means understanding the difference between cash in the bank and money that is actually available for new policy choices. At the same time, our general reserve and buffer capital provide an important safeguard against unforeseen events. As a small island, we know better than anyone that unexpected events can occur, whether they are natural disasters, infrastructure failures, or economic shocks. Building resilience is therefore not a luxury, but a necessity. Maintaining strong financial management is not without challenges. Capacity constraints remain one of the biggest issues facing our organization. Projects sometimes take longer to execute than planned, recruiting qualified personnel can be challenging, and maintaining our infrastructure requires structural resources that extend beyond the annual budget. These are challenges we must continue addressing together. At the same time, I believe it's important to recognize how far we have come. When we first started strengthening our financial management years ago, much of the discussion focused simply on balancing the budget. Today, our discussions are different. Today, we discuss resilience, risk management, internal controls, and governance. We discuss long-term sustainability. And while the organization obviously still has its flaws, to me, the level of our discussions today is a clear indication of how much this organization has matured. Before concluding, I would like to recognize the many people whose dedication made this annual report possible. First, I want to sincerely thank the entire finance department. Preparing the annual accounts, coordinating the audit process, responding to auditor questions, and compiling a report of this quality requires months of hard work, professionalism, and attention to detail. Your commitment has once again resulted in a product that reflects the high standards to which this organization holds itself to. I also wish to thank all department heads, policy advisors, and staff members throughout the organization who contributed information, financial data, and performance reporting throughout the year. The annual report is never the work of one department. It is a reflection of the work of the entire organization. Financial management is sometimes viewed as a technical exercise. I see it differently. Financial management is about building and then maintaining trust. Trust from our residents, trust from the Island Council, trust from the ministries and the politicians in the Netherlands, and trust from our partners. That trust has taken years to build, and at the same time, it has given Saba a seat at the table and opened doors of opportunity that otherwise might have remained closed. It has allowed us to secure a more adequate free allowance and funding for investments that will continue to improve the quality of life for the people of this island. This reputation is one of Saba's greatest assets. It has taken years to build, and it deserves to be protected, strengthened, and passed on to those who will continue building Saba's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. I now open the floor to Councilmember Charles, who will submit his questions, of course, or ask his questions, of course, on the year report. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Zegers, for that insightful introduction to this year's annual report. We've met with the accountants to clarify the management letter, and they express the same sentiments, that there has been significant progress over the years in terms of the annual report, and it's good to see that that continues to go that way. However, it is a very comprehensive document, a very complex document, as you mentioned, and of course some questions remain. Doesn't mean that things are not being worked on, but I think as one of our main tasks is to ensure that financial oversight continues to improve and to get clarity into where are the challenges. We do have some questions. One of the concerns identified in the management letter was that the author identifies a potential lack of legal basis for certain levies. Has the Executive Council obtained legal advice or legal opinions regarding this matter? And if so, can the Executive Council summarize the conclusions of these opinions and indicate whether they have identified any risk for the public entity. Ernst & Young continues to identify opportunities for improvement in the management and oversight of subsidies provided by the public entity. Can the Executive Council provide an update on the progress made in addressing this finding? And while the auditor mentions that there is continued improvement and no impact on the audit opinion, there are several findings that have appeared in audit reports for multiple years. Which findings does the Executive Council expect to fully close in 2026, and which findings are likely to remain recurring issues? Those are my questions.
Thank you, Council Member Charles. I now give over the floor to Commissioner Zegers.
Thank you, Councilmember Charles, for those questions. With regards to the outdated ordinances that were highlighted by the auditor, the Executive Council has taken note of these observations. The comment relates mainly to ordinances that go back to before the transition of 10-10-10 and should therefore be updated to reflect the current legal framework. At this stage, there's no conclusion that the levies are unlawful, nor has the Executive Council received legal advice indicating that this is the case. Nevertheless, we agree that it's a good governance to ensure our legislation remains current and legally robust. We are therefore working on updating the relevant ordinances, but this does take time. This will not only address the legal framework when necessary, but also modernize practical aspects, such as reference to the Farmer Nutters and Tilly's Guilders and other outdated provisions. With regards to how subsidies are managed, the Executive Council agrees that there is room to further strengthen the governance of subsidized foundations. This is already being addressed through a project with CRM Link. The assessment phase has largely been completed, including interviews with the relevant organizations. The findings will form the basis of updating the subsidy ordinance, policy, and procedures with the aim of strengthening governance, accountability, and oversight. And this is an ongoing process, and we expect to make further progress during the course of 2026. As for the findings that the auditor report on yearly, which is a big part of what the audit actually is useful for, because it really identifies where improvements are needed. The Executive Council objective is to continue reducing the number and significance of audit findings each year. Some findings can be resolved relatively quickly through procedural or technical improvements, while others require organizational changes and therefore take longer to fully address. For 2026, we expect to make significant progress on findings related to levies, project expenses, and IT security, where improvement actions are already underway. Other findings, particularly those related to organizational capacity and broader governance processes, are likely to require a longer-term effort. The important point is that the audit findings continue to decrease in significance over time, and that every recommendation is actively followed upon.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. Do you have any follow-up questions or remarks at this time? Councilmember Charles?
Just basically one follow-up in its regard to the IT infrastructure or framework. That had been, I think, maybe for the first time highlighted last year. And of course, I understand that it takes time to improve on those findings. But I'm just wondering, to what extent you expect those to be addressed and be resolved in the short term, especially the most pressing concerns.
Commissioner Zegers?
I believe it's difficult to say exactly, what would be resolved, but I do know that it has, the attention of the organization, where we see the team is being built to adequately address, the needs and what's still lacking. That's part of good governance. There's funding available. So to say exactly what would be resolved is hard to say right now. I'm also not the portfolio holder of cybersecurity. That's something that falls under the governor, actually. And unfortunately, he's not here to maybe give more insight into that request. But definitely is a priority. We see the need for it. We also see, we've learned from our neighbors, how vulnerable it can be when, those, measures aren't necessarily in place where information can be easily obtained and, go in the hands of the wrong people. So it does have, indeed, the intention of the organization.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers.
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any follow-up questions or remarks based on the Commissioner's responses? No. Okay, thank you. We now go on to the questions I had, of course. And the first one was regarding organizational capacity and project delivery. So both the annual report and the Ernest & Young report pointed to reoccurring challenges related to delays, vacancies, limited organizational capacity despite a strong financial position. So I would like to know if the Executive Council agrees with the statement. Of course, the report suggests that Saba's biggest challenge is no longer funding but execution. So I would like to know if the Executive Council does agree with that assessment, and if so, what specific actions are being taken to strengthen capacity and to ensure that projects are delivered within the planned timelines. And my next topic was based on infrastructure maintenance and long-term planning, which of course, Commissioner, you did allude to earlier as well. But the annual report does note that maintenance of public buildings and roads continue to largely be reactive rather than structured, which we already know. And most public buildings do not have a multi-year maintenance plan or a road maintenance plan, and is most of the time just on an ad hoc basis. The EY report also notes the establishment of a $3.42 million maintenance provision and emphasized the importance of having a robust multi-year maintenance plan. So I would like to know if the Executive Council could provide an overview of the following, and that is how many public buildings and public spaces currently do have a multi-year maintenance plan. And I also alluded to this earlier, which the Commissioner answered a bit, of which roads have been identified as the highest maintenance priorities. And the final question on this point is, when can the Island Council expect a comprehensive maintenance plan for public buildings and road infrastructure? I know this is something that the Council has stressed over time, so I would also like to have an update on that. My next point was on the financial position and, of course, also delivery of community priorities. Over the past several years, Saba's cash reserves have continued to grow, and both reports does indicate this, and states that the public entity maintains a strong liquidity position. So while significant needs remain in areas such as infrastructure, maintenance, housing, project implementation, and so forth, I would like to know how the Executive Council balance maintaining a significant cash flow while also addressing pressing community priorities. And regarding delayed and ongoing projects, the annual report identifies delays in projects such as the purchase of the Viola Cottage, the ATM facilities, remaining works at the Hyson House, and so forth. And I know we can all see that many of these projects are ongoing, but I would like the Executive Council to provide an update on the status of these projects, including possible completion dates. And my final point was regarding food security, local production, agriculture. The report states that the objective of increasing local food production was successfully achieved. I would like the Executive Council to explain how this success was measured, what percentage of food consumed on Saba is currently produced locally, and how does this compare to previous years? And also, what targets have been established for the coming years to further strengthen food security and reduce dependence on imported produce? That concludes my questions on the annual report for today. Commissioner Zegas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Lady, for the questions. The first one about organizational capacity. The Executive Council agrees that organizational capacity remains an important point of attention. However, I would not conclude that the execution has become a major problem. Overall, Saba performs well in filling vacancies and delivering projects, particularly when compared to the other Dutch Caribbean islands. Where delays do occur, they are often linked to a limited number of specialized vacancies or to external capacity constraints such as the availability of qualified contractors to carry out projects. In addition, the availability of suitable housing has become an increasing challenge when recruiting professionals from abroad. We continue to strengthen the organization through improved planning, staff development, targeted recruitment, and where necessary, the use of external expertise. While capacity will always require attention, I am confident that the organization continues to strengthen its ability to deliver. As for the infrastructure maintenance questions, the Executive Council agrees that a more structured approach to maintenance is needed, which is why a maintenance provision has been established in 2025. Earlier in the previous discussions, we spoke about the AEF report, which provided a much greater outline of what's needed. So this is only a small piece of that pie. Multi-year maintenance plans are already in place for social housing and sports facilities. Plans for school buildings, playgrounds, and the road network are currently being prepared. The road condition assessment, which is expected to be completed by the end of this year, will identify the highest maintenance priorities and form the basis of the road maintenance plan. For the remaining government buildings, no up-to-date maintenance plans are currently available. Given that approximately 25 buildings must first be individually inspected, it will take time to develop comprehensive maintenance plans. Our expectation is that this work will largely be completed during the course of 2026. But again, this links back to capacity. That's a goal, and we will work towards that. But of course, we do have people moving in and out, so we have to see how far it actually takes us. As for the financial position, maintaining a large cash balance is not an objective in itself. A significant portion of the public entity's cash position relates to special purpose grants that have already been committed to projects and therefore cannot simply be spent on other priorities. The objective is to ensure that available resources are invested in the priorities identified by the Island Council through the annual and multi-year budgets. At the same time, we must maintain sufficient liquidity and reserves to meet future obligations and respond to unforeseen circumstances. The bigger challenge is not the availability of project funding, but the lack of sufficient structural funding for the long-term maintenance and replacement of public infrastructure. This has also been recognized in studies commissioned by the ministry. We will therefore continue advocating for more sustainable funding while making the best possible use of resources currently available. As for the delayed and ongoing projects, you mentioned 3 in particular. The Viola Cottage, the status of that is that we are still waiting on information from the owners to proceed with a notary. The ATM facilities, I can announce that the one on the airport and the one on the harbor will go live on Monday, and we expect that the ones that will be stationed in Windward and the bottom, those will also go live during the 3rd quarter of this year. And the Hyacinth House, which will, I assume everyone has seen the sign, which will house the ING Bank, that is also completed, and an agreement has been made with ING as of the 1st of June. So they are now renting that building. As for agriculture and food security, given our size and geography, imports will always remain an essential part of our food supply. Rather, success is measured by increasing local production, improving food security, and making the island less vulnerable. We are seeing slow progress, but local production of vegetables continues to increase through the Hellsgate Farm and the hydroponics facilities, with produce being supplied to restaurants, the weekly market, and directly to residents. In addition, the reforestation program is expected to increase the availability of locally grown food in the coming years. We do not currently have reliable data to determine exactly what percentage of food consumed on Saba is produced locally. An estimate would be around 5%, but more importantly than that figure is the positive trend in local production. Looking ahead, we will continue investing in local agriculture where feasible, including expanding hydroponic production, supporting backyard farming, and improving animal husbandry. At the same time, food security is about more than local production alone. It also means ensuring reliable import routes, sufficient storage capacity, and greater redundancy in our supply chains. Those will remain important priorities for the Executive Council. I believe that answers the questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers, for your elaborate responses. Of course, for me, it's clear. And I think in regards to the infrastructure and maintenance, et cetera, once we receive the AEF report, I think that will answer a lot of the concerns already. So we look forward to also receiving that. I don't have any additional questions at this time, but I look to my colleagues to see if you have any follow-ups. Councilmember Charles, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of my questions is, when we had a discussion with CFT, one of the statements that they made was that in comparison to what's expected in terms of spending, that we have underspent a bit. I was just wondering if the Executive Council also shares a similar opinion. In regards to the maintenance plans, because I do realize that, there's been a delay in establishing them because of funding, financing, and so on. But at the same time, we also building necessary support to ensure that they're executed when they're established, because, it's one thing to have those plans, but then it's another thing to ensure that they're adhered to. So I'm just wondering how we're gonna ensure that it's maintained. And in regards to food security and local production, there was a recent report that indicated that Saba could build resilience through more food production, and I see that this report was published. I'm wondering if the Executive Council has taken note of the report and how they plan to address the findings.
Thank you, Councilman.
Just for clarity, the name of the report was Strong Foundations for Sustainable Growth, and it was by the Amsterdam Bureau of Economics.
Thank you, Councilmember Charles. Commissioner Zegers, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Councilmember Charles, for those questions. The one regarding the comment by CFT, this is not a new comment, and it's more about forecasting, and I believe a bit less than just about the moment when the comment is being made about spending, because what we've seen over the years is that we underspend during the first parts of the year, and then you see a build up towards the ending of the year. There's also things like, for example, like when the vacation allowance is being paid out or the Christmas bonus. Those are big sums of money that you don't necessarily see being reported into the first quarter. So while the CFT has a very valid point, I do believe if you look at the structural budget, I believe departments are able to keep up with what's budgeted. Often you see underspending where it concerns like funding that gets incorporated into the budget through special purpose grants, and sometimes that's because of the ability to find a contractor to do the job or a consultant to assist with creating a report. So it's more around those lines and not necessarily always related to the actual structural budget, which supports the everyday departments. As for the maintenance plans, a very good point. definitely capacity is needed to make sure that even when their plans are in place, that we keep them up to date. That's something that I do believe that we need to plan better for. And with regards to food security, I am aware of that report. And, I believe there's always room that we can do more for ourselves here on Saba. That's why we always, talk about sustainability, not just in food, but in energy. So I do believe that, with programs like the NEPP, like, for example, the phase 2, there is, again, attention for food security. So, through projects like that, I do believe that we can provide more support and build on what we already have. We can also try to do more in the schools, which we already do. We have the kids that come to the hydroponics farm that, you just get a basic understanding of how it works. They have their own little areas where they also have their plants. So I do believe, that's something that we can build upon to, get our community more involved.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. You have anything else?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just that the Commissioner mentioned the phase 2 of the NEPP, and I was just wondering if we could get a presentation to see how that relates to food security.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any follow-up questions at this time? Councilmember Wilson, do you have anything? Okay, so then this would conclude the question round for the annual report. I now look to all of you to see if it could be a hammer piece or, okay. Okay, so the annual report 2025 will also be.
Madam Chair Lady, although it's maybe just going to be a formality during the meeting, I would like it to be known that I would like to say something right before it's passed.
Okay, I will make that known to the chairman since he's not present here right now.
Thank you.
So also, before concluding this point, I would also, of course, like to thank the Finance Department, the Executive Council, all other civil servants, of course, involved in, of course, the annual report. I know a lot of hard work goes into it. So thank you all once again for a great job. And I remember during our meeting with the auditors, they also mentioned that this report went much smoother even than the year before. So again, thank you all for the work you do, and I really appreciate it. So this brings us to the last agenda point, which is the closing. So today, I would like to make 3 conclusions, and that is that the Island Council proposal for the study abroad support policy will be a hammer piece. The Island Council proposal for the Saba language policy 2026 to 2030 will be a hammer piece. And lastly, the Island Council proposal of the annual report 2025 will also be a hammer piece for the Island Council meeting. So at this time, I would like to thank you all for joining the Central Committee of today, Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026. After closing this meeting, I would also like to mention you can join back in at 2 o'clock, and that's when the Island Council meeting will start. And of course, other agenda points will be discussed there and so forth. So thank you again for joining us, and do have a pleasant day further. Meeting closed.